Rob to you. So as you know, I haven't been kind of talking about people's biogs and stuff like that. It's far better to share personal stories. Rob is a brilliant man. He's done the classic 4-year Buddhist isolated retreat. Before that, he was a professor of criminology at Cape Town University for many years. He did brilliant work upsetting the political structure of apartheid South Africa. In fact, one thing he wrote ended up on the front page of the New York Times, which got him into all sorts of wonderful trouble. He's a real disruptor. He's a brilliant man. He's written loads of books. I've got 3 of them now. Tranquil Mind, this one is out of print, but it is in print under the title, What is Meditation? So maybe Flo can find these as we go. What is Meditation? If anyone asks me for an introductory book to like mindfulness and Buddhism, this is the one I give to them. And in fact, it's probably out of print because I bought so many copies of this. I've just seen, I've still got 4 on my shelf. I just hand these out because this is the best. You know, you can read it in a day. It's a short book. This is the best introduction to Buddhism and mindfulness. Then to go deeper, Diamond Mind, this is still in print, really brilliant book, looking at the deeper levels of both mindfulness meditation and insight, or Vipassana as you might know it, and Buddhist psychology. But my favorite of all of Rob's books is Living, Dreaming, Dying. This was the book that I read that first got me to one of Rob's courses, because for the first time there was someone talking about lucid dreaming and the connection to spiritual practice, the connection to the death bardos. And also it was the first time I really understood an element of Vajrayana Buddhism. You know, I couldn't work out why there were all these Buddhas. I was like, I swear there was one Buddha, this guy who lived 2,500 years ago. Why do they keep talking about Buddhas? And Rob used this term enlightened archetype. And it was using that kind of Jungian Western psychological terminology that I understood that allowed me to realize what these Buddhas are. These are enlightened archetypes of our own divine nature. These aren't externally existing. These are internal representations of who we are, of our Buddha nature. So if you've ever tried to read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, a lot of people do, because it's kind of the most famous book, I guess, in like pop culture, isn't it? It went way over my head. It's incredibly dense, incredibly difficult to get a hold on, I think. However, if you're interested in what it contains, read this book, Living, Dreaming, Dying, because Rob's found a way to really kind of translate what's going on in the Tibetan Book of the Dead into English, you know, plain English, into a way that we can truly understand. So yeah, he's written brilliant books. He was and still is the representative Vakon Rinpoche in Africa. He set up loads of Buddhist centers in Africa. He's done brilliant work. He set up the Mindfulness Association. I know loads of people who have trained with the Mindfulness Association. And like I said, he taught me everything I know. This is the guy who took a risk on me. So 14 years later, I thank you for taking that risk, Rob. And whenever you're ready, Rob, if you'd like to unmute and say hello to the group. Oh, we just need to unmute Rob if possible. We see you, but you're still muted.
Okay, that should
there we go.
Okay.
You can hear.
Loud and clear. How you doing, Rob?
Great. Lovely to hear from you, Charlie. I'm a bit embarrassed at the introduction you've given, and I hope it hasn't created unreasonable expectations in your wonderful looking audience. But I think Charlie was probably one of the best students I ever had. And they say in Tibetan Buddhism that the student always exceeds the teacher. And Charlie is proof of that. So he's gone way beyond anything I ever attempted in the field of lucid dream. And I'm very happy now to be one of his students. And it's lovely to meet all of you. And I hope we're going to have a great evening together. So I'll just hand over back to Charlie and we can carry on.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rob. I want to start with just some basic kind of definitions of terms. What do you mean when you, as a mindfulness pioneer, what do you mean when you use the term mindfulness?
Yeah, mindfulness became popular in the 60s, the word. And I think a lot of people have misinterpreted it. The definition I've worked on is knowing what is happening while it's happening. So what we're doing when we train in mindfulness is we're teaching the mind to focus knowingly into the moment. Now, that sounds quite simple, but when we look at where most of our minds are, most of the time, most people are in a state of distraction. They're here in the world, but their minds are generally wandering around. So they're thinking of a lot of other things. And I think Charlie mentioned I used to be a lawyer. I was actually a magistrate at one time. And a lot of the traffic cases I heard were caused by lack of mindfulness. People driving their cars and daydreaming and not seeing what was going on in the road and then having crashes. So that's just one area in which mindfulness is very valuable. It's the quality of being intelligently and accurately present so that we know what's happening while it's happening and can behave intelligently in the world and not do harm. So I would summarize that mindfulness is the act of knowing what is happening while it's happening.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rob. And another term that you use a lot is insight. What do we mean by the term insight?
It's very connected to mindfulness. So the definition I've generated is very similar. Insight is recognizing what is happening while it's happening. So the key quality of insight is this ability to recognize. Now, mostly people don't recognize what's going on around them because they're so absorbed in their own thoughts, their own feelings, and their own definitions that they don't see accurately what is actually happening. So insight is the ability to look past one's own confusion and see what's really there. So insight is recognizing what is happening while it's happening.
So that idea of looking through confusion and seeing what's really there instantly makes me think of lucidity. Can lucid dreaming be seen as a type of insight practice?
Absolutely. When I did the 4-year retreat, one of the areas we focused in was lucid dreaming. And it was definitely associated with insight because it's training that part of the brain. It is able to look past what's generally happening and see what's there. There was quite a funny story. I don't know whether it was your dream or mine, Charlie.
I'm sure I've stolen a few of yours when I tell my stories, so go for it, whoever it was.
This guy was dreaming, and in his dream, he was always being chased by a figure that wanted to harm him. So night after night, this dream happened. And eventually he was obviously very short of sleep, and he decided he had to do something about it. So he went to sleep that night and the dream started all over again. And he thought, right, now is my moment to end this cycle. So he turned around and confronted this creature that was chasing him and said to him, "What do you want? Why do you keep chasing me? What's wrong with you?" And the creature looked quite surprised and said, "How do I know? It's your dream." So I think that's something we can all bear in mind, that a
Yeah.
huge number of things go on, but they're actually generated by our own dreams.
Mm, mm, mm. So, Rob, like that, where you're in a lucid dream and you realize that the shadow you've been running from is in fact your own self. From a mindfulness and insight point of view, what are the main benefits of lucid dreaming? Like, why should we learn to lucid dream?
Yeah. First of all, we need to look at the way the human psyche is constructed. We have a physical body that we know about, and we have a conscious, rational mind, which is the one that all of us are using at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Then simultaneously, there are other levels of consciousness functioning. And one of those is the dream state. Now, the dream state, I say, is happening simultaneously, but it's actually dormant while we're consciousness. So it's here, but it's not active.
Mm.
Then when we dream, we enter into that dormant state and it awakens. So there's a transition, which is the hypnopompic or hypnagogic.
Mm-hmm.
And one is when we're going to sleep, and the other is when we're waking up. So we transit out of pure consciousness, and we start moving towards either unconscious or the lucid dream. Now, most people drop straight into unconscious. And so they would spend several hours in unconscious, and then they would wake in the dream, as we call it, and start dreaming. But most people don't remember much of their dreams. So the reason we train in the dream state is so that we can dispel this level of unconsciousness and enhance the power of our conscious awareness. And then we can do far more with our lives than if we spent half our lives or a third of our lives unconscious.
So it's for the benefit of our waking state that we get lucid, not just for the lucidity itself.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's exploring a dimension of our minds that we don't normally explore. So a lot of our potential is left unexplored.
So, Rob, when you left academia and you went into the 4-year retreat in Scotland, led by Lama Yeshe Rinpoche, which must have been, amazing experience, Dream Yoga was taught as part of that retreat. I think for a kind of a few months, you were the main focus of the retreat was Dream Yoga, which of course is slightly different to lucid dreaming. So why is dream yoga seen as so important for a Vajrayana practitioner to learn? The very selected practices on those 4-year retreats. Why do they select dream yoga?
Yeah, you've got me on the spot because we're not supposed to talk about what happened in the retreat.
Sure.
So
Then don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I give it a shot, guys. It's worth a try. Maybe one day he'll tell me all the secrets.
Keep trying.
Even Lama Yeshe, when I saw him in South Africa, we were having such a long chat, and he was telling me all this stuff he doesn't usually chat about, and even he stopped at that too. I think it's your cunning plan to get me into the 4-year retreat, which I think in this lifetime at some point I will have to bite the bullet and do. So, Rob, in your brilliant book, Living, Dreaming, Dying, you mention how lucid dreaming can be used to prepare for the death bardos. Can you tell us something about that?
Absolutely. In Tibetan Buddhism, what they say is that we're passing through a number of bardos. A bardo is just a space in time. So at the moment, we're in the bardo of living life. So we're in the interval between birth and death. But life is very flexible, and in life, we can also go into states of unconsciousness. And then we can also go into hypnopompic or hypnagogic. And when we go into those, we explore dimensions of consciousness which we're not necessarily exploring or experiencing while we're awake and while we're conscious.
Mm-hmm.
So this helps us experience and understand more than we would normally.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we die, this body and the consciousness associated with it disintegrates, it dissolves.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we realize is there is another sheath of consciousness present, which we're not normally aware of, and that is the death state, the death mind. And the death mind is mostly experienced in a state of unconsciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So just as when most people go to sleep, they go unconscious, just as if they get knocked on the head, they go unconscious. So when they die, they go unconscious. But if you've trained in lucid dreaming, you have a much better chance of what they call waking up in the death state. And that's very beneficial, because if you wake up there, there's a great deal of potential. You can practice your meditation, you can move around, you can visit places. I remember, was it you, Charlie, who also decided to visit the moon?
Yeah. And it took a while to get there.
Yeah.
This is the weird thing. I thought, this is a lucid dream. Shailesh is right. It was quite a journey. I remember being like, "God, this is taking a while to get here." It's floating up and up and up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember because when I told you that dream, it was the first time you'd said you'd actually questioned, like, I don't think that was in your mind. I think you went beyond the mind there, as
Yeah.
if it was something, beyond the dream state. I remember that clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we leave the consciousness of this body, a lot of possibilities open up. And one is visiting the moon, if that's what we want to do. But it's also levels of understanding and being able to appreciate, and best of all, to investigate things that we can't investigate while we're awake.
Mm-hmm.
So we can really extend our life experience hugely if we learn to master the bardo, the bardo of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Then the big thing for most people is what's going to happen when I die.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what Lama Yeshe says is that dying is like going unconscious in life.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go to sleep, you go unconscious. And if we understand dying, it's that same process. We go unconscious, we leave this consciousness and it dissolves. And then we find ourselves in the bardo of death. And the term they use is we wake up there.
Mm-hmm.
We wake up dead, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
So we wake up in the bardo of death. And then if we've trained, we will be able to attain recognition there, i.e. recognizing that we are now dead, because a lot of people, or most people, when they die, don't realize they've died.
Yeah.
And for a long time, there's a lot of confusion in their minds. So with this training, we can realize quite quickly, oh, now I'm dead, and now I can have a ball in the bardo of death. So we can do all sorts of things there. I'm not quite sure how many things we can do, because I've forgotten since my last death, but I'm sure we can do a lot.
Rob, the thing about this isn't on my list of questions, but I just want to ask, because most beings don't know they're dead, is the concept of ghosts that we have in the West Are they kind of trapped bardo beings, people who are stuck in the bardo, or is it a different thing?
That's certainly one of them. There are several different possibilities, but a very real one is that people have not realized that they're dead, and therefore they get attracted back to the place where they lived, where they had the last strong emotional attachment. And they will be drawn back to that, and then they will hang around there. And they will often try and talk to their friends and relatives who are still alive, and they become quite confused and hurt because they're always being ignored. So there's quite a lot there that people can do if they are able to access the bodies of death while they're alive, because they can help people who've died.
Yeah.
In Tibet, there were people who trained specifically to do that. They would contact people who died, because often people who have very strong minds can cause problems for the living, you know, like hauntings and poltergeists and all that kind of things. So those are usually people who've died and haven't been able to recognize that they've died, and are trying to come back and join the living again, not realizing that they're not any longer among the living.
You know, you said there, Rob, about the Tibetan practitioners, Delogs, I believe they're sometimes referred to as, who can kind of go into the death bardo and help liberate people who are stuck there.
Exactly.
Are they using like the lucid dream state, or more like an astral projection state? How are they accessing the bardo while they're still alive?
I think it would be an extended training from the lucid dream, because the training, when you do that, is first of all to wake up in the dream, i.e. become conscious in the dream. So lucid dreaming is just that. You're training yourself to wake up in the dream, and then you know this is a dream. And then their training progresses from there to being able to project throughout the dream bardo and contact people who are either dead or still alive, who are distressed, and then be able to help them.
Wow.
So your lucid dreaming training is very valuable, and it'll be hugely valuable when you die.
Thank you, Rob. Oh, I want to talk about the hypnopompic, because you personally taught me how to appreciate the power of the hypnopompic. I think I'd kind of heard the term when I met you, but I had no idea there was a possibility of meditating in the hypnopompic, of resting mindfully in that state. And I remember when we first started hanging out and you told me, you were only half joking. You said, oh, I wrote most of my books in the hypnopompic state. And I didn't really get what you meant until later. You said how you were still waking up really early after the four-year retreat. And I think you even said something like, Charlie, waking at 4 a.m. is a very unsociable time to awake. So I kind of stay in that hypnopompic state from 4 a.m. till 6 a.m. And that all these insights would come to you. And I was saying, but wait, you're asleep. And you went, no, I'm resting in the hypnopompic, just on the edge of sleep. So can you tell us about what the hypnopompic is? Why is it so important? What are some of the benefits of it?
Yeah, well, as you say, it's that state that's just on the edge of waking. So in order to understand why it's valuable, is we first look at the condition of consciousness, the conscious mind we're using at the moment. This mind is, by comparison to our other mind states, rigid, literal, and closed. It's closed to anything but the information it has gathered during our lives. And this is why intellect is often an obstruction to further exploration of the mind, because intellect relies on the known. It's always relying on logic and the known and rational deduction. Now, the hypnopompic, and for that matter, the hypnagogic, are two states where our consciousness has not yet fully engaged the intellectual rational mind. So if we can bring wakefulness into that hypnopompic, then we are able to access the depths of our understanding, which we can't access when we're fully awake. So we can then explore and, as I said, learn to meditate in that state so that our meditation is able to go deeper and further than it would while we're in the conscious mind. So it's really learning to value the fact that we have dimensions of consciousness which go above and beyond the rational, intellectual, logical.
Yeah. And which we kind of societally we prioritize this kind of waking rational consciousness as the highest there is.
Absolutely.
But actually the creativity that can be accessed through the dream state, through the hypnopompic, through the hypnagogic is often far greater, right?
Absolutely. But in our culture, you have to keep quiet about that. Otherwise, people think you're a bit weird. And in fact, they will start saying you're very weird. And then they will want to treat you with drugs. So we really have to approach it carefully.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you, Rob. So we're talking about the hypnopompic there, and you mentioned the hypnagogic too. I want to look at the kind of state of drowsiness. I remember on retreat a few years back in South Africa, you really, a lot of people sit there trying to meditate and they think that drowsiness is the enemy. You know, they get the nodding dog thing and then, oh, they're back. And I remember this one session, you told us to intentionally move towards drowsiness. You went, you know, the whole group can be nodding dogs like that. And for about the first 5 or 10 minutes, I was at the back and I saw everyone kind of slumping forward. Then after about 5 or 10 minutes, just everyone sat and had this perfect 50 minutes of meditation for the rest of the hour, as if you didn't fight drowsiness, if you allowed yourself to go into it, actually it kind of displayed and released itself. So I was wondering, can you tell us, drowsiness, is it the enemy? Is there something we can work with here? Should we embrace drowsiness?
If you can, definitely embrace drowsiness, but there are 2 dimensions to drowsiness. One is authentic. That is when your body is tired and you've had a busy day or whatever it is, and you've gone to bed and it's time to go to sleep. So there, drowsiness is your friend because it enables you to slip out of the conscious awareness into sleep. But then there is the problematic level of drowsiness, which comes on us from a lot of different causes. One is when we're exposed to doing something which we don't want to do. Like I remember a friend of mine used to have a lot of girlfriends and he always ditched them in a rather unkind way. And one day one of these girls nailed him and I happened to be present or unwillingly when she was having a go at him. And I saw him use a very simple strategy. He simply went to sleep.
What, in the middle of this argument?
Yeah. She was going at him and he just went to sleep. Now, there's no arguing with that. So drowsiness is a very good defense against something we don't want to face and deal with. And a lot of people don't realize they're doing this. They just realize, oh, I'm feeling drowsy now. And oh, maybe this is quite a nice way not to face what's happening around me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found that sometimes in Buddhist teachings, Rob, where like if I'm about to, it hasn't happened for a few years, but I remember it clearly happening just before the really strong Buddhist teaching, as if my ego as a self-defense mechanism, it made me feel really drowsy.
Yeah.
As if like close off your eyes and ears to this. You don't want to hear it. When, of course, it was the most beneficial thing. Is that what's happening? Is it like a self-defense mechanism?
Absolutely. And it's very egocentric.
Mm.
It's an ego defense, often against something we need to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that sometimes in the lucid dream state too, there can be this confabulation aspect where when you're about to do something really beneficial in the lucid dream, suddenly something distracts you or you lose lucidity. And I often wonder if this is like an ego defense to kind of, distract us from doing that beneficial action.
Yep, that sounds like it, doesn't it? Great.
Great. The shadow. So again, so many things you introduced me to, dude. It's like making these questions was like a kind of review of all the stuff you've introduced me to. You literally told me about the concept of the shadow. Again, like the hypnopompic, I'd heard of it before, but I didn't really know what it was, the Jungian concept of the shadow.
Yeah.
Why is working with the shadow in both our waking state and our dreams so important?
Well, first of all, let's see how the shadow comes about. Because the shadow is a product of what we're doing with our minds. Every time we negate and deny and refuse to face something, we're engaging an energy which is potentially dark. So we're not wanting to see something that we regard as unpleasant or wrong. And the mind pushes it aside, and it gets pushed down, and it gets pushed down, and it gets pushed down. So this is how the shadow is formed. The shadow is not something we're born with. It's something we create in the course of our lives through the process of denial. Now, there comes a point where we can't deny any longer without a repercussion happening. And the repercussion is that the shadow becomes strong enough that it starts to dissociate from our conscious control. And then it seems to attach to consciousness like an enemy. So people start becoming aware of this powerful black thing that is following them or attaching to them or attacking them or whatever manifestation it takes. And most people just keep running and they take drugs or whatever it is to get away from it. But if you're doing the mind training, it's very, very valuable to have your shadow manifest. If you can work up enough strength to face it. And you can do that by recognizing the shadow is not some external entity, it's you. The shadow is the product of your mind, and you can learn a huge lot from it. So gradually what you do is you train yourself to allow the shadow to manifest, then you face it, then you make friends with it, and then gradually you reintegrate it. And as you reintegrate, all the information and the insight and the understanding contained in the shadow becomes available to you. Because the shadow is not unintelligent. It's got your intelligence in it. And it's part of you. So people become terrified of the shadow when they think it's an external entity come to torment them.
Yeah. And Rob, when the shadow turns up in our dreams, what's the best port of call? Or what's the best course of action, should I say?
To face it and invite it to come to you.
Yeah.
Try and offer it a party. We're going to have a party. Come and join us.
Yes. This is my man. So you see, anyone who's done my shadow work courses and stuff like that, see, I'm not making this up. This isn't my crazy idea to invite your shadow into the lucid dreams and hug it. It comes from this guy.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So Rob, just one more question, and we're bang on time actually, which is brilliant. Um, I think it's probably in Tranquil Mind, I think, where I first heard you say it, but I know this is just something to live by as well. You talk about the importance of kindness.
Yeah,
Why is being kind important?
because kindness is the daily manifestation of compassion.
Mm.
And compassion is the strongest force in the whole universe,
Yes.
because it's this fundamental caring for the welfare of all beings. So where there is compassion, there is a dissolving of all negativity, all harmfulness, all pain. So what we're looking at here is being able to train ourselves so that we become a manifestation of the energy that's going to benefit beings.
Mm.
And the day-to-day manifestation of that is kindness.
Mm.
When you're being kind to beings, you are recognizing their authenticity and their validity, and you're recognizing your ability to strengthen that and offer some sort of sharing with them.
Mm. Mm.
So kindness is very important. Compassion is a word that often frightens people. It's such a big word.
Mm.
And they think, oh, well, you know, compassion sounds a bit too much. But kindness is more accessible.
Mm. Well, that's lovely the way I think you said was your exact words, but kindness is the everyday application of compassion or something like that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Rob, and thank you for your kindness.